Well, again, I welcome you back to Ireland. I've liked this theme this year of being in Ireland for VBS because I have Irish in me. I have German, Irish, and American Indian. Go figure, right? Now you understand me. As being part Irish, I'd like to teach you a few Irish sayings that you may hear if you ever travel to the real Ireland. First of all, you know this one. Top of the what? Top of the morning to you, right? That's one of the most well-known Irish statements. It's actually more of a stereotypical statement, but the Irish people play along with it, and they say at least the Americans are trying, right? But here's another one. How's this? If you want to know how someone's doing and you're asking a friend about a third friend how they're doing, you would say this: how's he cutting? That means how are they doing? There's another one too. Let's say you walk into a room with Irish people. Someone in that group, as you walk in the room, is likely to say something like this: ah, sure, it's yourself. And that just means they're acknowledging your presence. So you're welcome. I've taught you Irish this morning. And I just want to say you're welcome. I do want to invite you to turn in your Bibles, though, to a passage that is well worn this past week. It's Psalm 23. Psalm 23. If you're using one of the Bibles that are under the chairs in front of you, it's on page 563. Psalm 23. And while you're turning there, I personally, as a pastor, want to thank Pastor Michael and his wife Maddie for their vision for VBS this year. This work starts months in the past, and it's on their mind. As a matter of fact, they're probably already thinking through dates and themes for next year. And Pastor Michael, you've done an excellent job, and Maddie, you've supported him wonderfully with your skills and talents, and on behalf of our church family, we thank you. And I, too, would also like to say thank you to the volunteers who helped make this all happen. We had teachers, we had 50 people, he said, on an average each night helping. We had teachers, we had decorations, which started weeks ago. We had nursery workers that not only watched the children of the workers, but they got an early start to each evening and a late finish. We had those who were involved in registration. We had social media. We had Ernie and Natalie Bowman, who fed our stomachs every single day as volunteers. Sunday through Thursday night, they prepared a meal for 60-plus people, and that was a huge blessing. Thank you also to your entire family. We had those that were assigned to float around campus and fill in spots that emptied out. We had security team, we had crowd control, we had food, prep and delivery, we had games, we had crazy skits, we had music, we had memory work assistants, we had techs. I can go on, but with me, would you just express your appreciation to these volunteers with a round of applause? Just thank you. Very, very grateful. VBS is a lot of fun, you know that, right? It's tiring, but it's fun. Someone said that VBS is like having fun by running a full kitchen blender with no lid on it, right? It's just fun. Not always neat, but fun. I loved our theme, though, this year. The theme was Emerald Crossing, and the subtitle was An Irish Adventure Through Psalm 23. And it was Psalm 23 that riveted our attention and gained access to our children's hearts this week in VBS. You say, who wrote Psalm 23? I think you know the answer to that. It's called the Shepherd's Psalm, and it was written by a shepherd. It was written by none other than David, who would become King David. You know this psalm, don't you? Look down at your copy of Scripture and look at verse 1. It's so familiar. Do we even need to look down? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That sounds strange the first time you read it. What do you mean I won't want him as my shepherd? No, it means I won't lack anything because of my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. As I said, you already know this psalm. Perhaps you're here this morning and you're like, yeah, I know that psalm. I've heard that before. Everyone knows verse 1. Even if we're not in church, we know verse 1. You might even be thinking, hey, I'm not really religious. I'm not too serious or involved with the church. So, yeah, I know the psalm. I know verse 1. But I personally can't say I have a shepherd. Well, I got to tell you something out of pastoral honesty, and it's this. Everyone has a shepherd. Absolutely everyone here has a shepherd. You say, well, what's my shepherd? Well, your shepherd is who or what you run to when you feel lost, when you feel confused, when you feel afraid, or when you feel depleted. That's your shepherd, whatever you run to. It's who or what you run to for satisfaction, for sustenance, for safety, and just to make sense out of life. You run to your shepherd. Some of your shepherds may be another person in your life. Some of your shepherds might be what you run to get a buzz and take the edge off. Some of your shepherds may be a fad, or it might be a cause. It might be a technological distraction. It might be science. But it might also just be yourself. You're your own shepherd. But hear me out. Everyone has a shepherd. Everyone. So this morning, in the wake of VBS and our theme this week, I think it's time that you get real and study the shepherd, the ultimate shepherd. And the time for getting real is right now. It's right now. What I want you to do is I want you to take in one of your hands your shepherd. Even if you say you're not religious, what is it or who is it that you run to whenever you're in crisis? Whenever you need to make sense out of life? I want you to hold your shepherd in one hand, and in your other hand this morning for the next few minutes, I want you to also hold the shepherd that is described in Psalm 23. And I'm going to call on you this morning to compare them. And this morning, make the call. Who's going to be your shepherd? As we go through Psalm 23, I just want to note 4 descriptions and then ask you 3 questions. That's our sermon this morning. I want, first of all, to note 4 descriptions of the shepherd, the one we're reading about in Psalm 23. And I think you're going to agree that when it comes to the shepherd here in Scripture, in this psalm, there is no equal. Absolutely no close equal. How do you describe the shepherd? I mean, we know how we would describe with words George Washington, a great leader in the past, not perfect, but a great leader. We know how we would describe, say, a Michael Jordan from the past, a great basketball player who was without equal pretty much in his day. We know how we might describe Messi in Argentina, playing for the World Championship today. We know how we might describe Einstein, one of the greatest minds. We got that. We know people in our world and in our history that some would say were without equal, but how do you describe the shepherd in Psalm 23, who definitely has no equal? I want you to check him out. First of all, what you're going to see when you look at the shepherd in Psalm 23 is that he alone can provide comprehensive contentment. Only he can. You say, where do you see this? Well, go back to Psalm 23. And again, let's read verse 1 and go into the first part of verse 2. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Watch this. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me lie down in green pastures. What does that mean? Oh, this is taking us to the scene there on the hillside where shepherds tended to their sheep back in the day, this day in Palestine. And they would, as many shepherds do today, they would be on a constant search for in the winter or in the spring, for a place to kind of call home for the season. It would be a place where they are safe enough to settle, even safe enough to lie down, a very vulnerable position for a shepherd, for a sheep that the shepherd's watching. Lying down makes you extremely vulnerable. What's going on here is this shepherd is being pictured as finding that spot and staying there with the sheep. He's not just finding it with the sheep and for the sheep, but he's going to stay there the entire time in their midst. It's a safe place. It's green pastures. It has all that your sheep will need if you're the shepherd. It is not just going to get you halfway through the season or halfway through that chapter of the year that they need to be fed so well. No, it's abundant and it's provision and it's safe enough to lie down in. What is this? This is comprehensive contentment. You see, with this shepherd in Psalm 23, whatever you need, he will abundantly supply. He'll give you what you need to the point where you are not only satisfied, but there's rest. You lie down, knowing that your shepherd brought you to this place. He's caring for your needs, and he's caring for what would be, I would qualify, your legitimate needs. You say, what does this shepherd in Psalm 23 give you? He gives you everything that in his mind he knows that you need. He remains with his presence in your midst, and you're at peace. There's a comprehensive contentment. But let's keep reading. You see, when we get to the second phrase, the second line of verse 2, we see comprehensive security. Comprehensive security. Look at verse 2. Not only does he make me lie down in green pastures, but, look at this, he leads me beside quiet waters. He leads me beside still waters, some of your translations say. See, what does this mean? Well, these waters are talking about a source of waters, not just a puddle, not just a ditch that fills up after the rain temporarily. The water here is being produced here, or it's moving through this area. It's a supply of water that is fast moving. You see, sheep need water to survive, just like you and I do. But the sheep will consume the water. There needs to be more water coming, either from a spring underneath or down river, or from upriver flowing downward. This is a picture of the sheep and the shepherd at these wells or at these springs. But in the case of a river, what is so refreshing to the sheep and what is so necessary to the sheep, listen, can also be deadly to the sheep. Because if the river is deep enough and if the current is forceful enough, it can knock a sheep over, even perhaps trap a sheep's foot in the rocks and break it, and suddenly they're in a deadly situation. That's why the shepherd's there. He's providing security, getting you to what you need and staying there while you enjoy what he provides. See, what does this mean? Well, comprehensive contentment means that whatever you need, he's going to overwhelmingly supply. Comprehensive security means wherever you are, he will make it a safe place for you. Wherever you are, even by a raging river, you need the river, but he will make it a safe place for you. Now that gets personal real quickly. Because already there's some exceptions in my mind going on as well as in your mind. What if I'm in a hospital, suffering? He'll make it a safe place for you. You say, what if I'm in a home that is one that just makes me live on the edge of my nerves? He'll make it a safe place for you. You say, well, what if my marriage is in trouble? What if my finances are a mess? What about that? He'll make it a safe place for you. Because wherever the shepherd is, you are where he wants you. And he makes it a safe place for you. You know what? Even in the Old Testament, if we talk about David, the author of this psalm, this 23rd psalm, there was a point when God had him under the leadership of a faltering king named Saul. And this king had lost the blessing of his presence, of his shepherding, if you will, in his life, because he had been disobedient too many times. And God was beginning to set the stage for a transfer of the kingship from King Saul to King David. It's during that in-between time, Saul went farther and farther downhill spiritually to the point where he became violent even towards David. Several times, Scripture records, Saul tried to kill David. Saul wasn't a safe place for David, but since David had the Lord as his shepherd, he made even those spaces around Saul a safe place. See, what do you mean? Listen to these words that David wrote when he was fleeing from Saul. And I want you to count how many different names he calls the shepherd in his life. I love you, this is Psalm 18. Psalm 18. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock. He's my fortress. He's my deliverer. He's my God. He's my rock in whom I've taken refuge. He's my shield. He's the horn or the strength of my salvation. He's my stronghold. Did you count those? No wonder he ends verse 3 with these words. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I'm saved from my enemies. This is comprehensive security. The shepherd's with you. You're safe. My son and his wife and kids flew into town yesterday from Charlotte, North Carolina, from that airport to ours. It's been great to have a day with them. Alicia and Andy are always here with us and are a daily and weekly blessing in our lives. And my remaining daughter and her husband and their kids are driving here right now, making their way here from Georgia. They'll be here this afternoon. My wife has made all these plans, planned out all the meals, and we're going to enjoy our week together. You say, well, where is every day going to take you? I'm not sure because I'm the husband. And I don't understand that kind of planning. But I just kind of go along with it, right? You say, well, where are you guys going to go? I just want to be together. And there may be some times when the guys break off from the girls or whatever. But I'll go anywhere in Southeast Michigan if I'm flanked by my three sons, Andy and Leighton and Jared. Jared's here. I should have him stand up. Don't want to embarrass him. But he's kind of big. He's kind of tall. And Andy and Leighton are grown men. They're all active. I'll walk anywhere in Southeast Michigan with these guys flanking me. Because if I'm with them, I'm safe. You say, well, they're going to make you buy dinner now. I know, I shouldn't have said all that. But I want to use it as an illustration. If your shepherd's with you, you'll go anywhere because you're safe. So these are the best words I can come up with as I read this psalm. How do you describe the shepherd? Well, you describe it by talking about comprehensive contentment, comprehensive security. Or there's another description, a third description. As I go into the first part of verse 3, I see comprehensive correction. Comprehensive correction. Look at the first line of verse 3. It says, He, the shepherd, restores my soul. He restores my soul. You say, what does this mean? Literally, you could translate it this way. He brings me back. He brings my life back. He brings me to a place that I should be when I take myself out of those good places. He restores my soul. He brings me back. You say, well, what's the meaning of this? Here's the meaning. This is what David is saying. Whenever I stray, he will initiate a rescue. This third line's not about bear and tiger dangers or deep waters or drought. The great danger in the first part of verse 3 is myself. He protects you, he protects me from ourselves. A comprehensive correction when we need it. He'll come for us. This is the picture we read in Matthew chapter 18, verses 12 to 14, where a shepherd has 100 sheep, and one goes off, and going off and becoming lost puts them in a vulnerable position to the elements, to animals, to thieves, even to their own injury. And what does the shepherd do in Matthew 18? He leaves the 99 with someone to take care of, and he personally goes to get that one that has strayed away. That's the absolute picture of what we're seeing here in Psalm 23. Except you're the sheep. I'm the sheep that has strayed away. When you and I go off in our sin, whether we realize it immediately or not, your shepherd comes for you. This shepherd comes for you. And when you and I get stubborn with our pride of life, our opinion of ourselves, when you and I get careless with our desires of the flesh or the desires of the eyes, there's a heavenly amber alert that goes out. And God himself comes for us. This is comprehensive correction. I love these words that I come across in Job in the Old Testament, chapter 5, verse 18, talking about God. It says, he inflicts pain and gives relief. He wounds, yet his hands also heal. I love that verse. There's a comprehensive correction whenever I need it. That's the shepherd. What words do we use to describe the shepherd that reveal there's no close equal? Well, I have just one more observation, one more description, and it's the last part of verse 3. I'm going to see here comprehensive guidance. Comprehensive guidance. Look at verse 3. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. He guides me. What in the world is this? Well, back in the day that David is writing this, you had a lot of wilderness. You had a lot of desert. You had few rivers, but you also had, in that context, many roads, many paths, if you will, that man and animal may had created because of use. And there were a lot of parallel paths, at least as you observe them, they seem to be parallel. But you have to understand that only one of those paths that look alike will take you in one right direction. And the shepherd knows which one. The sheep don't. They will follow the shepherd. He personally doesn't just point the way, he leads them. He goes before them. Say why? Because listen to this, the shepherd's getting his sheep, or the sheep of the man that owns the sheep actually, his getting the sheep to the right place is for the shepherd's glory. See? It says it's for his own name's sake. Watch this. If we're talking about comprehensive guidance, when we think of the shepherd, it means this: wherever you go, without exception, he clearly identifies his will to you. What are you supposed to do? Who are you supposed to be? That's what I mean by comprehensive guidance. My wife and I drove home about 8 days ago from North Carolina. And yeah, long trip. We jumped on the road early. We were rolling by 5:30. Got home right around dinner time here. And we were approaching the final few hours of our trip, which are my least favorite. They are driving through Ohio. We try to do all our stops in northern Tennessee and then wait out till we get across the pure Michigan line. The rivalry is that strong. Now, I always have an earbud in my ear. I put it on this side so it's not too obvious to my wife all the time, because, of course, if she says something, I want to hear her, right? I want to communicate that. So I put the earbud over here, and I always have the map app going on my phone, just to know what's on the road ahead, if there's a hazard or something like that, or if there's construction or an accident. Well, as I was approaching Covington and getting ready to go over the bridge that brings me into Cincinnati, my ear exploded. It's like, you got to take this exit. And I'm like, I said out loud to my wife, I said, we never take that exit. That's going to put us in a way off the road, and I'm really wanting to get home in good time. And so I'm arguing with this voice in my ear, and I'm like, I know the route I always go. And it was a Saturday. There shouldn't be anything going on that's going to, no rush hour, nothing like that. And so I went against that voice, and I paid the price. We lost about 50 minutes on our trip because the highway for a little section was actually closed, I-75. And so I paid the price of not listening. And I told my wife after that what I've told her many times when I've done the same thing. I just need to learn to trust the phone. This phone can see what I can't see. Well, you know what? As we think of this shepherd and the guidance, this comprehensive guidance, the sheep need to understand that they just have to trust the shepherd. Because wherever we go, he will safely guide us and identify his will. Now, his path for your life may be a path that's hard, not easy. It may be a path that's dark at different times, not bright. It may be a path that's rough for a stretch and not smooth. Or it may be a path that's confusing, not clear. That's okay if the shepherd is your shepherd. Now, I have a question for you. After reading especially verses 2 and 3, my question is this: can your shepherd promise that? What you run to, or who you run to, when you are feeling confused or discouraged or vulnerable, what you run to for a buzz or a fad or a technological distraction or science, does it hold up to what the real shepherd can do? Can your shepherd that you run to, even if you're not religious, provide not just some contentment, not just temporary security, not just a momentary correction, and not just sporadic guidance? Can your shepherd provide that comprehensively every day of your life? Maybe these VBS kids were onto something this week. Now it's your turn. I want to ask 3 questions about the shepherd. I want to ask 3 questions about the one who is with us and satisfying us and protecting us and correcting us and guiding us. I have 3 questions. First of all, does this shepherd that David's writing about, does this shepherd's care have any limits? Does it have any limits at all? And my answer out the chute is this: there's no extreme in your life that can cancel this shepherd. None. You see, where do you get that? Verses 4 and 5. Look at verses 4 and 5. And by the way, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. You got to work. If I'm up here working, you got to work down here. As I read verses 4 and 5 with you, I want you to see if you note 3 very important changes. Okay? Do some work here. 3 changes. It says in verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Did you notice the changes? I see no less than 3 changes. You say, what are the changes here? Well, did you note the role change? Did you see that? The role change. This is David writing this. And you say, well, what role? Well, in verse 3, he's still a shepherd. Verse 4, he's still talking about shepherding and the shepherd. But when we come to verse 5, we're not talking about a shepherd anymore. We're talking about a kingly host. A host. I find that interesting because David is writing having observed many shepherds and many hosts, many kings. Not only that, I find it interesting because David himself held both of those roles. He himself was a shepherd, and he himself was a king who was a lavish host. But I also find it interesting, this role change, that David himself, even though he had studied this with others, even though he himself filled those roles, he's still blown away when he looks at the subject of Psalm 23, which is God himself, and says there's no comparison when it comes to being a shepherd and a lavish host, spreading a banquet. I found that interesting, but there was a second change. Did you see that as we read? Did you feel the fear change? You see, the greatest fear changed on us there between those 2 verses. Back in verse 4, when we're thinking about shepherd and sheep, we have a rod and a staff. Those were for the protection and the guidance of the sheep, and the shepherd would use such instruments to also fend off their greatest enemies, the wolves and the bears. That was the enemy in verse 4, but then when we get to verse 5, we're at a king's banquet hall, a celebration going on without limits. My cup's overflowing. He's anointed me as his guest, his invited guest, with oil. I'm at this lavish banquet of victory. But who also was at that banquet? My enemies. Did you see that in verse 5? My enemies are there. But they're not invited guests. My enemies at that banquet are my conquered enemies that have been conquered by this king that's also the host. That was a fear change. These are the things that we fear most in life, aren't they? We fear death, and we also fear enemies. We fear death as the ultimate end of life on this earth. If I could borrow the words of Job in chapter 10, verse 21, we read these words, I go and I shall not return to the land of darkness and deep shadow. David talks about the shadow, the valley, and death. So we have death and we have enemies. Death after this life, enemies during this life. These are our greatest fears. You say, I agree. Then that answers the question you asked. Does this shepherd's care have any limits? And the answer is no extreme in your life. Not death or not enemies can cancel him. He is the shepherd that conquers every fear. But there was a third change as I read through those two verses. Did you capture it? We noted the role change and we felt the fear change, but do you hear the voice change? Did you capture that? Say, what do you mean, voice change? When we got into verse 4, we're maintaining the same posture as David is with the talk of I walk, I fear. But then things change. Because we find in the middle of verse 4 and on through verse 5, it's direct address. David has shifted in this psalm from merely being a reporter to someone who's having a conversation with the shepherd and the king himself. So what does that mean? That David is satisfied that there's no extreme he will ever face in this life that the shepherd can't care for him through. There's a second question as we look at Psalm 23, and here it is. Will I ultimately regret following this shepherd? Will I ever regret following this shepherd? What's the answer? I'm going to give it to you straightforward. There will be a cost in following the shepherd. There will be. But the cost will be eclipsed by your gain. This takes us to that last verse of this familiar psalm. Surely, in other words, mark it down. What I'm getting ready to say will never not be true. Surely, goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's interesting. It says there that something's going to follow me, follow you. And that's a word that could also be translated pursue or hunt. There's always something right on your heels when you follow this shepherd. And what is it? Is it the enemy? Is it death? No, they were dealt with in the verse above. What's dogging you in a blazingly glorious way, it says here, is goodness and loving kindness. Goodness here means whatever is truly beautiful. And notice you're not forced to choose between goodness and loving kindness. It's not goodness or loving kindness. It's goodness plus loving kindness. Goodness is not only what's true beauty, but mercy is a demonstrated loyalty from the shepherd towards me. And here's something that just blows my mind. This shepherd is so loyal to the ones that he leads that it blows your mind, especially when you realize it's not based on your performance. It's based on his pleasure. What a shepherd. David put it this way in another psalm a few pages to the left, Psalm 16, verse 11. It says this, speaking to God, you have made me known the path of life. And in your presence, Lord, is fullness of joy. And in your right hand are pleasures evermore. The great British preacher Charles Spurgeon said about this line, surely goodness and mercy, he writes, goodness supplies our needs, mercy blots out our sins. You say, how long does that happen? It says all the days of my life. Right up to that moment where I will no longer be in this life. If we could have an interview right there, I would say, all my days, they haven't been easy or smooth or always clear, but the shepherd has walked with me, hunting me down and dogging me in a wonderful way with his kindness and his mercy. It's like the missionary doctor that the commentator Phillips mentions in his commentary on Psalm 23. This missionary doctor was dying of leukemia, and he was nearing the end of his life. And he said these words to those gathered around him before he died. Quote, "My brothers and sisters, David speaks of the valley of the shadow of death. I have come to the valley, but I find no shadows here. On the contrary, I have found that the path of the just is as a shining light that shines more and more under the perfect day." Will I ultimately regret following this shepherd? The cost, and there will be a cost, will be eclipsed by the gains. You know, the Irish had many blessings that they would say in their culture and still do to this day. I found one of them last night. And this Irish blessing, which I believe is called an Irish morning blessing, goes this way. May your mornings bring joy and your evenings bring peace. May your troubles grow less and your blessings increase. Kind of fits right there with verse 6, doesn't it? Only for those who let go of their shepherd, admitting their shepherd isn't comprehensive, and they come to the shepherd. And that brings me to the third and final question. You say, we ran out of psalm. Yeah, but I still have a question for you. And the question is this: who is this shepherd? Who is this shepherd? Well, I'll kindly throw that one back to you. Ask him. You ask him yourself. He will answer you with his own words. And I want you to do this in John 10. So turn to the Gospel of John in chapter 10. You want to know who this shepherd is that David's writing about? That David himself tries to emulate? Do you want to know who this lavishly victorious host is? You have it right here. Ask him. Hear it from his own mouth. Look at John chapter 10 and look at verse 10, right in the middle of the verse. You ready? This is Jesus speaking. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And listen, I am the good shepherd. But keep reading. And the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Wow. We know who the shepherd is. It's Jesus. But now we have new information, don't we? I will lay down my life for my sheep. You say, is that important? Important enough for it to get repeated 4 times in this context? Look at verse 11, as you saw. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. Look at verse 15. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Look at verse 17. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it up again. Verse 18, no one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up. This commandment I received from my Father. What do you mean, lay down a life? Why does Jesus lay down his life? Why did he die? It was for the sake of his sheep. Why? Because the sheep were lost in a spiritual dark sense, as every person born is, lost in their sin. And Jesus accepted in his body the due judgment for every sheep that would believe. Every sheep that is his. I came across this story from the 17th century. You know the name Oliver Cromwell if you enjoy history. He was referred to as the protector of England. And he, of necessity, had to sentence a soldier and his army to be shot for war crimes. The execution was to take place at the ringing of the evening curfew bell. However, this particular night, the bell didn't ring. There was no sound from the belfry. Say why? Because that soldier's fiancée had climbed into the belfry and clung to the great clapper of the bell to prevent it from striking. She would eventually be summoned to appear before Cromwell to account for her actions. And she wept and showed him her bruised hands and bleeding hands. And Cromwell's heart was touched. And he said these words, "Your fiancé shall live because of your sacrifice. Curfew will not ring tonight." Life because of sacrifice. That's what the Good Shepherd, according to Jesus, who is the Good Shepherd, is saying. He's saying, I'm going to make the sacrifice of my own life so that my sheep can live forever. Peter puts it this way. I want you to listen to this verse as I read it to you. 1 Peter 2:24 and 25. He himself, okay, that's talking about Jesus, the Good Shepherd. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sin and live to righteousness, for by his wounds we are healed. For you were continually straying like sheep, but now you have returned to the shepherd and the guardian of your souls. Isn't that beautiful? That's the gospel. It was Spurgeon again who said, I must confess that I never realized Christ's preciousness so much as when I feel myself still to be, apart from him, an undeserving, hell-deserving sinner. Wow. That's who the shepherd is. Jesus Christ. And the shepherd's great gift of ultimate lifelong care, I'm talking about comprehensive contentment, security, correction, and guidance, is offered to us, to you, to the sheep who are unworthy and can be so stubbornly content with our lesser shepherds. For some in this room and under the sound of my voice, maybe even watching online, I just want you to know, I know you know Psalm 23 already. Do you know the shepherd? The shepherd? Because I firmly believe in my mind and my heart right now that he's coming for some of you right now. Everyone has a shepherd. Make the call. One of my favorite Christian writers, he's with the Lord now, has been with the Lord for a few years now. He's a biblical counselor named David Powlison. And he wrote my closing remark in an article he wrote about Psalm 23. Listen to this. He's talking to you, the reader, the listener. When you awaken, when you see who Jesus actually is, everything changes. You see the person whose care and ability you can trust. You experience his care. You see the person whose glory you are meant to worship. You love him who loves you. The real Psalm 23 captures what life feels like and looks like when Jesus Christ puts his hand on your shoulder. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes as I prepare to